my notes. So I imagine many of you have already been to a few of these, but I'm going to run through the rules and how everything works. We do encourage you to use the Q&A feature that is up in the right-hand side to ask questions, and you can have a look through and see if somebody else has already posted the question and voted up. That way we know which ones are popular, and we'll try to get to them quicker. You can post an anonymous question if you like, possibly part because we may record this session and make it available later. So if you'd rather be anonymous, and you can leave an anonymous question. So we have the topic of modeling, packaging, and reuse. We have 2 talks that hopefully you will have looked at, but I'm going to invite our speakers this evening to give you a brief recap of it before we get to the questions. And presenting the readying web archives to consume and leverage web bundles is Sawood Alam, recent PhD grads from Old Dominion University, currently working at the Internet Archive as a web data scientist, web and data scientist, I should say. And the second presentation was given by Yinlin Chen. Dr. Chen is a digital library architect and assistant professor at the Virginia Tech Libraries in Virginia. He leads a dev team at the University Libraries, building a new digital repository using So I'd like you both to join me on stage. So Sawood, if you would like to give a brief recap of your talk.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Sawood Alam. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
All right, awesome. So web bundling, or formerly known as web packaging, is an emerging web technology which allows a bunch of web resources to be bundled together and deliver it somewhere else, and then render it as if it is coming from the main origin. So let me give you an example. .com published a news article with some videos or other images and everything else that comes with a web page. That's where CNN.com is blocked, and you want to take that news there somehow. If CNN.com provides a bundle for that page, you can download it and send it over using some messaging platform like WhatsApp or email or what. Users there can download that bundle and open it in their web browser. If the web browser supports web bundle, what will show up on in their web browser as if the content from CNN.com, and the authenticity is kind of because CNN.com will sign its content before bundle, right? So it doesn't matter who delivered it. The content will show up as if it is coming from CNN.com. Other use cases could be news pages can be indexed in Google search or some other search engines or CDN providers and all. And when people go there and download content from there, they are actually not downloading from the origin. They are downloading from these third parties, but the content is coming from the origin. So when we saw this, I was like, yeah, this is a perfect case for web archiving. What if we could somehow pages from different origins, or if we get bundles, we just save those things. And then when someone asks us, hey, how did CNN.com look like in 2018? We say, hey, here is the bundle, have it. And they will see it as if it is coming from CNN.com. We are not delivering it, right? But that is the height of imagination, how far we can take it, basically. In reality, that's not the case. There are a lot of hurdles in there because signature will not last that long. It will only be valid for like 7 days or something like that. But there are still some interesting value proposition in there that we can leverage. So with our talk presentation that we recorded, we came up with two ideas where it affects Web Archive. One is, once bundle is in use and a lot of sites start using that, how are we going to ingest that? Because we'll be getting bundles and that will have multiple resources in there. We are not going to save it as a single bundle. We can have it, but all those individual resources, if you want to index them, we'll have to unpack that. So our callers need to understand that, so that the bundle resource, but it's a package of multiple resources. So indexing those individually, and then we can leverage it further when we are replaying pages. We can group things together rather than giving one item at a time. We can just serve bundles as everyone else does, as first-party providers, or we becoming the origin as Web Archives. So this was the message that I wanted to kind of put forward with this talk, and I'll take any questions on that.
Thank you, Sawood. And yes, we'll welcome all questions for Sawood. I can start typing them in. However, before we get to any questions, I'd like to invite Dr. Chen to join us here and give us a quick recap of his talk. Or have we lost? Nope, there he is.
Hi. So my talk is about using the AWS service to process WARC files. So in the past, we set up server and do process WARC files, but it's limited by the computing resource we have. So in this presentation, we propose another new design using serverless architectures to process WARC files. We still process WARC files, but using serverless entirely in AWS. And the result is right now we can process any number of the files. We don't worry about how much server we have. We just use it as AWS, and it's serverless, so we don't need to maintain servers. So we just focus on our business logic and our analyzed text. So, and in our future work, we will continue to improve that and including more analyzed work and implement more advanced programming inside our current infrastructure and do more analyzed things. Yeah, that's just a simple recap. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So I think I may start with you then. Now, I was watching your presentation, and one of the things that I started wondering about is, like, you use this to process your data. How easy or complicated would it be to change, to use your own analysis code rather than yours? Is this sort of built very much around your pipeline, or is the actual analysis being done something that could be easily swapped out?
You can say this is a pipeline, right? So inside this pipeline is pull the Docker, so we can replace the Dockers. So like if your program can package into this a Docker image or container image, so you can hook into this pipeline and do your things. Yeah. So we use this on other tests like do image process. We just replace the Docker and put it in the pipeline. Then they can do different things. Yeah.
Yeah, it would probably be possible to, as long as you can Dockerize your thing.
Yes.
Moving over to Sawood for a moment. Web bundles are really interesting, but my first question is, are people actually using it, and do the browsers support it?
So there are a bunch of technologies in web bundles, and some of them are more supported than others. So one is called signed exchanges. So when you have these HTTP messages like responses, bundles may or may not be signed, those exchanges, right? And if it is signed, that basically means the origin actually provided that signed the resource with their private key, basically. Not the whole resource, but they kind of take digest of those resources and multiple together, and they sign that way, and they provide it that way. So signed itself, and that has some other use cases beyond web bundles, and that is something that is more widely supported than the web bundle as a whole. Google Chrome is supporting it version 82 plus or something like that, but it has been around for like now in Google Chrome. Other web browsers, they have some reservations about it. Firefox was very critical about this technology, and the problem that they were seeing is the power dynamics that kind of goes into a distributor's hand. So, for example, Google being biggest search engine, they can, pick the publishers out of the. They can serve a lot of content on their own, basically. And some changes that we want for it to work better for web archiving is something that will make it into the hands of evil, basically. So there is a kind of a thin rope to. You need to be very careful when we are pushing about this. In a couple of years ago, in 2019, there was a workshop organized by IAB, Internet Architecture Board, and we presented there. And the workshop was all about kind of identifying this dynamics of publisher versus the distributor, more rights to it, and there are the specs are still kind of being brushed out. And for example, they added something in the spec of fetch, which was the most recent content identified by a URL in any of the caches, which basically means we cannot serve multiple versions at the same URL, which is a problem for us. And we surface this issue as well. So the support in browsers is getting not quite there. But if you rely on Google Chrome, then yes, it is supported.
Yes, they've almost conquered the world, I think. I guess my follow-up question would be, you mentioned some missing features to really for having work with web archives, kind of way of scoping. But my question is really about how responsive do you think the standards body in the browser would be to feature requests from web archiving community?
So they have a mailing list, as many other IETF users group do, and a bunch of people from Iipc. I know Ilya Kremer is part of that mailing list. I am there. There are some other people from Google and some other browser vendors. But I think more people from the web archiving community being there and kind of surfacing these problems that we will face, or that we can benefits that we can gain from it, will certainly bring it more shift the direction. One thing that we noticed in our presentation there was web archiving was an strange animal for them, and they got enthusiastic and they learned a lot, but then they were trying to push away, like, hey, this is not our primary use case. This is not our primary use case, right? And the point we try to make is like, it is a use case. Primary or secondary doesn't matter, right? So yeah, I mean, in fact, if you read their use case documentation, that is another separate spec. One thing they cite is Andy Jackson's tweet, where he basically said, hey, here exists a web packaging specification that people are talking about. It sounds like an interesting thing for web archivists to be interested in, and that is something that is now part of their, like, cited in their spec, their tweet.
All right. Let's hope for the best. So I can see we have several questions coming up in the Q&A. I want to remind people you can ask both presenters questions in the Q&A on the right-hand side. But before I get to the audience Q&A, I have one more question for Dr. Chen. unless we lost him. Still there with us? So my question is sort of a little bit about Amazon, working with Amazon, because you mentioned in your presentation about using the what we call the spot, the auction system for provisioning, sort of to keep your costs low. And I just wanted to sort of ask, as someone who's been really considering moving stuff to Amazon as well, whether your experience is that it provides a significantly lower cost than the on-demand. Sorry, you are muted.
Can you repeat your question?
So in your presentation, you talk about that you chose to use Amazon's spot pricing rather than the on-demand service. And I was just sort of wondering, obviously that is in theory cheaper because you are sort of using this auction system, but whether you found it to be as inexpensive in practice as it is in theory.
No, so it's in practice, it's not in theory. So so Amazon provide different price models. So usually on demand, just like you require resource and you pay the monies, and the spot instance is work like just like you beat the price. So for example, on demand price, you charge $1 for an hour, and so the spot instance you can say I beat just like 50 cents for 1 hour. And if you got this bid, you can use this instance for 1 hour, just 50 cents instead of $1. So your cost will be cheaper. But however, the stop instance is not guaranteed you will get this. So sometimes the job will fail. So that's the reason I mentioned in the slide. We need to do more. I need to do more experiment on that because we want to make sure how much usage, CPU usage, and the memory usage for that, so we can like beat the correct price in order to continue to use the spot instance to make all the expenses lower. And yeah, that's I will try to say in here. So ideally, we will use spot instance to do all the tests because this is just pass one file, finish, pass one file, finish. We don't need to like acquire a resource to run all the time because they will spend too much money on that. Yeah.
That makes sense. So we're just jumping into the audience question. We'll just continue as it's on this theme. Would it be possible for researchers to use their funding to pay for Amazon time and resources needed to run the analysis? Would that be something that the library would recommend?
Let me see the question. Using the funding. Yeah. So in the budget tech, some we got the funding from other like NSF or other funding agency, right? And I think AWS, our school partner with AWS, so we can use our funding money to use AWS service to do research. Not just my research, other professors do that too. We have ITS to handle the negotiate with AWS, and we can spend our fund on AWS to do research. So yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sounds like very nice to be able to sort of not have to pay for hardware that sits and gathers dust. Moving back over to Sawood, we have a couple of questions for you. So the first one from Jeffrey, do you preserve extra metadata, descriptive and/or preservation with the bundles?
So this is one of the criticisms about web bundles from web archivists, basically. One thing that we can say, hey, why did you create another specification of using another file format and all? Why not just use WARC that is like well established? It does what you're doing, like putting a lot of resources together with HTTP headers and all. And yeah, sure, but they kind of try to optimize it and not have unnecessary stuff in there. Web bundles, basically, from an archives perspective, what web bundle is like, you take a WARC file, create its index, and put in the same package so that you don't have to have like a CDX file somewhere else, right? In the bundle, when you deliver it to the browser, it knows like which resource is located where. And then along with that, you add a couple of extra things like, what is the entry point? Like it has multiple resources, but which resource to load in the browser as the primary thing, right? So this is kind of what a web bundle is really. But instead of using WARC format, they use something else, a CBOR format, which is like a compact binary object representation or something like that, which is lossy, by the way. And the reason is they are looking or aiming towards efficiency rather than preserve provenance and all. So it is not a very metadata friendly thing. For that, you continue using WARC files, and for delivery, just convert it on the fly in bundles and deliver it if you want to leverage it. One thing I would say is like, while we have a long wish list, even if they don't, fulfill all of those, whatever they have, we have from it basically. And we certainly need to have the ability to kind of understand at the crawling time, which will improve our coherence for decides like these are the resources needed for this page. Let's download the whole thing, and we don't have to do multiple round trips. Our the politeness and all those things will kind of work a lot better if we get there. But first, web adoption needs to be there first before we worry about these.
So a slightly different question from Sally. From the website manager's perspective, how easy is it to create these bundles?
So people behind the bundles, they have created command line utilities to create bundles, but they sign exchanges as well. And I think those utilities are written in Go or something like that. You can just download that and put your resources in a folder. And you say, well, there are multiple ways to create bundles. Utility. Forward if it gets adopted. And basically,
I think
it looks like we
may have lost you Sawood there for a moment.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay, so what I was saying is like there is command line utility published from the folks behind web bundles that people can use to create web bundles and sign those if they want to. Signing is optional. There is another, and people can their workflows to kind of creating web bundles for their sites or pages as they choose.
All right. Going back to Dr. Chen for a moment. So Grace has a question. Is there a white paper or a write-up about your work? I think she wants to pass it on to the Library of Congress IT folks who aren't here with us.
Sure, yeah. So right now I have a GitHub. Right now it's in private. I'm more than happy to open it. Just I need to like update some README to make it more perfect to share. And we have so can you tell me what's the best way? I can email me. Maybe I just once I finish this, I can send the information to Grace, or just let me. So please email me, and once ready, I will send my document to you. Yeah, it's almost there. Yeah, and.
Okay, we've lost Sawood. I think we may have.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible now.
All right.
Okay, so yes, I can see Grace saying thank you in the chat. So next question goes to Sawood from Brenda. So what kind of bundles can I create? For example, could I create a bundle of CNN captures from some fixed number of years ago?
So can create any bundle from any domain they want. Bundling is nothing beyond, like, I mean, as I said, it is more like a WARC file you put together and serve it. So the thing is, when it comes to signing, that's when you need to have the ownership of the origin you are talking about. If you are creating an unsigned bundle, then it doesn't matter which domain the content is. And as web archivists, even if we cannot have like long-term sign validation support, what we still can do is like, here is the content from these domains. If people want to believe it, that believe that it is not from that domain, that's fine. I mean, it is no worse than how we are doing it. But what we can do is, when we are if we now say it's coming from CNN.com, but we say web.arc/CNN.com, then we are still serving it from our own domain in that case, right? We find that resource using our own key. So the idea is like anyone can create one, but for client bundles, you'll have to have the ownership of the origin so that you can talk to the whole PKI.
Yes. So just it doesn't have to, a bundle doesn't have to just be one website. You could bundle multiple websites. Maybe if you have sort of topical collection. Or no?
The strategy of what you are going to bundle depends on your choice. You can have, like say, if it is a documentation of a utility which only has say 5 or 10 pages or 20 pages and a bunch of common shared resources, you can just put the whole site in a single bundle, or you can choose to have bundles for one page at a time. You can leave out some resources so that there is enough in the bundle, but remaining can be fetched later.
All right. So next question on the list is there a danger that bundles will become a de facto standard that has poorer metadata than WARCs? If we ingest and disseminate bundles, won't we promote round tripping with information loss? This is an anonymous question.
The purpose of, you'll have to think the
okay, now I can't hear or see Sawood, so I think his connection dropped.
Yes. I think we are. There aren't any more questions. Oh, wait, here's a question for Dr. Chen. Is getting the data in and out of Amazon's web services an issue for you? And if not, how would bigger web archives handle this with hundreds of terabytes?
Oh, this is a good question. So, if the AWS price models, you can put data in, right? But you will charge the data out. So you put the data into AWS is free, and but you get the data out of AWS, you need to pay how much transaction fees. But in our libraries, we put our data already in AWS, so we can use much more storage price, and we do analyze the data in AWS. So if I may, I also want to share my, can I share screen? I just want to share my.
Okay.
You can try, but it's going to be, okay, let's try it. If it doesn't work, then you have to just unshare it, if that's okay.
Of course, yeah. Let me see.
So it will take a second also for the screen to refresh, just to warn you.
Okay.
So press on the share and select screen and wait for about 8 minutes to refresh.
Sure. And
okay, I can see your screen.
So yeah, so you can see this is my I set up everything in the GitHub, and so it's just like we can not just me, everybody can just using one stack deploy and pure informations to deploy the whole entire pipeline to produce this setup and try to download the files from the compound call into and test it. Yeah, that's what I want to just share to everybody. Yeah, I just stop sharing. Yeah, so once it's ready, I'm happy to share this to everybody. Yeah. Yeah, I just need to write up, finish some write up, and write up. In the future, I will publish this with our result into a either journal or paper. This works. Yeah.
Thank you. We've got Sawood back. Chris, can you see him?
Yes. Perfect. Welcome back. And I think we may have one last question for you, which is, can you link bundles together? Or I'm not sure if Sawood, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. All right.
So we have time for one last question, which would be to you. Can you link bundles together?
So bundles are just served as like regular resources, and generally the mechanism of serving them is like when the browser makes the first request, or any client utility when it makes the first request to a server, it provides preferences for content negotiation. They say, hey, I can handle gzip file or deflate or whatever, right? I mean, I prefer language X or Y. The same way you can say, hey, if you have web bundles for this resource, I'll be happy to take it. And if the server has a web bundle where the resource you are looking for, so basically the client does the content negotiation, initiates the content negotiation. If the server has web bundle, then they will provide that. Otherwise, they will do the regular one resource at a time. Now, linking bundles, and in fact, there is a separate specification and discussion going on where not only linking to another bundle, linking to a resource in another bundle is also being some kind of spec'd out, and the kind of discussing what will be the URL format for that, and there is a lot going on in there. So these are kind of right now not very sorted out things.
All right, thank you. Thank you both of the speakers for enlightening us further on their talks. So Olga, you were just giving some admin information.
Yes, so this is not admin. I just really want to thank Chris as well for chairing this session and preparing all the questions. Thank you. Thanks to